This guy just woke up and found himself in a secret elevator. He was confused and didn't know where he was. Moments later, when the elevator door opened, a group of men gathered around. Thomas was confused and worried that he was being slaughtered or something. His first reaction was to run. However, because he needed to run too hard, he somersaulted on the grass a few times. Thomas looked up and saw that there were high stone walls around him. Well, there's nowhere to run. Then Thomas was thrown into the cellar and locked up. There is no escape. When he was sure that Thomas had calmed down, Albie, the leader here, took Thomas to get acquainted with the environment. Although the place is not too big, everyone divides the work to help each other complete it. Work is just eating, sleeping, and growing food. Looking at it, the days don't go by so bad. Albie told Thomas this place was full of men, and the underground elevator would provide supplies and bring in new people once a month. And this month's newcomer is Thomas. The guy wondered why it had to be him this month. Albie explains here, everyone is like Thomas. They all have no other memories except remembering their names, and they don't know why they were brought to this place. Finally, Albie told Thomas not to go near the maze wall. This means that behind those high walls is a maze. This made young Thomas feel even more curious. People are the type that the more they are not allowed, the more they want to do it. Looking at the lake, Thomas also saw someone running out of the maze. Thomas refused to listen to advice and decided to break into the maze. But as a result, he was attacked by a person named Glade and fell to the ground. Thomas was extremely dissatisfied. Why are people so worthy? The gentleman talks without taking action. Then, the stone wall behind began to move. The originally wide passageway was quickly closed. This made Thomas even more confused. New friend Chuck told him that the maze was only open during the day. Every evening it will be closed. At the same time, various changes will take place inside the maze. So among them, only runners are allowed to enter the maze. But even runners have to return before nightfall, because inside the maze there are monsters. No one trapped in there could survive the night. In short, the shot Gally gave Thomas was also to save him. Thomas understands the dangers of the maze, but at the same time, he also guessed that the only way out was through the maze. That means he won't be able to get out of this spooky place for a while. Chuck advised him not to be too pessimistic. He said the runners have marked 3 consecutive years in the maze. Maybe one day they can go out. But it's hard for Thomas to be so optimistic. The next day, he discussed with Chuck about how to escape while working on the farm. Can't we climb the maze wall along the vines? Can't we hide in the elevator back there? Chuck said they had tried these methods before, so don't think about it anymore. Let's do something more practical. Having finished speaking, Chuck threw it clearly to Thomas. He told him to go into the forest to get some fertilizer to fertilize the plants. Thomas went deep into the forest alone. He prepared to get some high-quality fertilizer, but he found some human skeletons. Then, suddenly, a strange-looking person appeared behind Thomas. This man is a member of Runner Ben. Just as Thomas came forward to say hello, he charged like an animal and knocked Thomas down. His mouth keeps talking. I saw it all. It was all your doing. The more he talked, the more he lost control and demanded to punish Thomas. Meanwhile, Thomas didn't have time to think too much. He was just thinking about escaping. It wasn't until he ran back that he was rescued by others. Albie, with his rich experience, immediately knew that Ben was not normal. When he turned over Ben's shirt and looked, he saw that he had actually been bitten by the monster in the maze. Once infected with the virus carried by the monster, you will gradually lose your mind. You become a zombie attacking people everywhere. To protect others in the camp, everyone must push Ben back into the maze, letting him die on his own. That night, Thomas had a strange dream. He was lying in an experiment with a girl, surrounded by several faceless experimenters. There was also a woman who kept repeating the same sentence over and over again. The effect is quite good. After waking up, Thomas happened to see Albie and Minho following Ben's footsteps inside the maze, but it suddenly started to rain. Everyone looked at the entrance of the maze and couldn't help but feel nervous. It started to get dark, but still no one returned. Minho appeared again at dusk. Albie is injured, but they cannot reach the closing entrance in time. When darkness falls, the door closes. No one can go out. The other young men all expressed regret and sadness one after another. Notified of the loss of 2 leaders, Thomas immediately ran into the maze to help. Minho was also surprised when he saw that. Do you believe that I told you to report to the police about putting myself in danger without permission? The sky quickly darkened and a dangerous aura gradually approached. Minho suggested leaving the unconscious Albie behind. If the 2 of them run away, there may still be some hope of survival. Right now, it's impossible to act like this. At this time, Thomas suddenly got an idea. He and Minho coordinated to tie Albie with vines, then hung him in midair. When it was almost the last minute, Minho suddenly let go and ran away. He hid in the vines, not daring to come out. As soon as the monster passed by, he tightened the knot. After making sure that Albie couldn't fall, he continued to hide. But just a few steps, he stepped on a disgusting pile of jumping matter. Then, the Griever fell from the sky. This is a monster that looks like a spider, but this ugly jumping monster has mechanical legs. It seems that it was also released by humans. Relying on the main character's flexible body and aura, Thomas escaped the monster's pursuit without any risk. Finally, Thomas also took advantage of the exit that was about to be closed to trap the Griever. In this way, the 3 of them successfully survived the night in the maze.
When the crowd saw them exit the maze, it was unbelievable. This was the first time someone had returned alive after a night in the maze. But Albie's wound is not positive. Because he was infected with the virus, he was not mentally clear. While everyone was praising how great Thomas was, Glade was extremely angry because Thomas had taken care of the monster. This disrupts the peaceful coexistence between monsters and humans, saying that Thomas must be punished. But the monster has attacked many of your runners. How can it be called peaceful coexistence? Minho thinks Thomas is brave and resourceful, and Newt, the group's deputy leader, instead designated Thomas as a runner. Others also began to join in. While everyone was arguing, the elevator rattled again. Thomas had been here less than a month ago. Soon, something even more unique happened. This time, the elevator sent the only girl ever. And in her hand, she also held a piece of paper that said she was the last person brought here. Just as everyone was wondering, the girl suddenly woke up. As soon as she opened her mouth, she called out his name, Thomas. Everyone's eyes turned to look at the person whose name was called. But he doesn't remember anything else, so he definitely doesn't know this girl. In the end, Thomas led Minho and the others into the maze again, because he thinks now is the best time to learn the maze. They returned the same way and found the monster's body. They also took out a sensor that emits a beeping sound from close to it. On it was written, "An experiment in a disaster area of the Earth," hereafter referred to as the experiment. Coincidentally, the same phrase also appeared in the elevator when delivering groceries. So, the people who brought them here are also the people who created this monster. Thomas still believes that this sensor can help them find the exit in the maze. But at this moment, the person who always supported him, Minho, threw a bucket of cold water. Minho shows Thomas a handmade maze model. These are all the results after 3 years of runner's search. But even if they ran to every corner of the maze, they couldn't find the exit. Minho added that the maze is numbered into 8 areas. These zones are turned on and off in order. Different areas are open each day. Thomas looked at the number 7 written on the sensor. It may correspond to the 7th area of the maze. How about we try exploring Area 7? Moments later, 2 boys ran to tell them the girl was awake. The only girl who sees so many men at once. The hand holding the machete stood on a high platform and turned on defense mode. Thomas, as the man whose name was called by the girl, had the opportunity to go up to the podium to advise her. Thomas briefly explains the situation here. He comforted her that memory loss was a common thing, so don't be afraid. Finally, she calmed down and told Thomas her name was Teresa. But Teresa still doesn't understand. Since fainting, she has been in a dream loop. Hearing her tell it, that was also Thomas's dream. He suddenly realized that the girl who appeared in his dream earlier was Teresa. So, it can be seen that it is not a dream, but a memory that happened in reality. Teresa then pulled out 2 syringes filled with an unknown liquid. Seeing the familiar word experiment department above, Thomas was happy, thinking that Albie was seriously injured and was not going to survive. So, he took a syringe from there to inject Albie, and it worked. Just after the injection, Albie stopped screaming and lost his mind. The next day, Minho and Thomas entered the maze again. With the guidance of this sensor, both successfully entered the dangerous abyss. They discovered a circle where Grievers' mucus was. At that time, a red laser beam swept over the 2 people. The maze system seemed to detect that the person coming was not a monster, so it immediately closed the exit. At the same time, many other traps were also activated to trap them. Fortunately, the 2 people ran fast, so they escaped the fate in a short time. Both thought that the circular passage was the exit. Since the monster can enter the maze from there, everyone can get out there too. Glade was the one who disagreed with their plan, because he was afraid that there would be more monster lairs behind that exit. Before he could say anything, Albie woke up. He even regained his memory. Albie also seems to be familiar with the old Thomas. He sadly said that the final target of the experiment was Thomas. The people trapped here are all because of you. Thomas was stunned by what Albie just said. This is not the first time he has been blamed. The guy who got the virus earlier said the same thing. Before this thing can be finished, another thing will come up. Tonight.
The entrance to the maze did not close when night fell. Strange sounds rang out. Grievers were coming here from all directions. An extremely bloody massacre officially began. Everyone was rushing around. Albie was also taken away by monsters. The attack wiped out more than half of the camp's population. Glade rushed up and beat Thomas, accusing him of being the troublemaker. This punch made Thomas realize he had to find out the truth as soon as possible. He decided to simulate the way Albie regained his memory. That's right, it's poisoning. Thomas deliberately stabbed himself with the monster's poisonous needle, trying to restore his memory. This person is so strange, he just likes crashing into places with no way out. Luckily, Teresa still had 1 more syringe left. People used it to save Thomas's life. Thomas's actions helped him remember some things. After regaining consciousness, he told everyone the truth about what he saw after being poisoned. It turns out he and Teresa are both internal employees of the Wicked Experimental Department. The remaining objects are research subjects of the Experimental Department. Over the years, they observed and tested those who were sent to the camp. But the specific reason is that part of the memory Thomas couldn't get it back. At the same time, Deputy Glade took command of the camp in place of Albie. Before now, he had always opposed Thomas's actions of putting himself in a bad position. The policy is to adhere to the rules and maintain the status quo to restore peace to the camp. He decided to sacrifice Thomas and Teresa to the monsters.
He thinks that's all. Monsters won't appear and scare them. At an important time, Minho, Newt, and others joined forces to save the two people. They decided to go with Thomas to find the exit of the maze. This was no different than treason. Glade warned them not to cause trouble because the camp was their home. Entering the maze means finding the coffin. Thomas countered that it was better to venture out than to wait here for support. The camp is not a house, but a holding cage. These words touch everyone's hearts. Among the people on Galley's side, there were people who stood up and participated in Thomas's escape plan. So Thomas took those who were ready to leave into the maze. After they worked together to destroy the first monster, more appear. Many monsters surged forward. During the chaos, Thomas told Teresa to open the exit using the sensor. But I didn't expect to have to enter an 8-digit password. Thomas thought the maze also had 8 zones. He quickly called Minho to tell him the locations of the zones so he could enter the numbers. But as soon as Minho said the first 4 digits, he was attacked by a monster on the ground. At a critical moment, a member of the group stood up and used all his strength to save Minho. Thanks to that, Teresa was able to decode the password. Working, the moment the exit opened, the rock above began to collapse. All the monsters chasing them were crushed to death. Although the temporary crisis has passed, the recent fierce fighting also left many people dead. The survivors continued to move forward. In front of them was a room filled with piles of corpses. All were shot by guns and bullets. Thomas realized, wasn't this the experiment in his and Teresa's dream? Is it the base of the experiment's maze? Thomas unlocked the control panel with his fingerprint. Dream manager Ava appears on the photo network. Here's what she filmed in advance for dementia survivors. The mystery of the labyrinth's existence is explained. It turns out that the planet has been devastated by a massive solar flare. Countless people were burned, leading to widespread famine throughout the world. What is more terrible is that it entails a pandemic of a destructive virus. Called fire bacteria, it mainly attacks the human brain. The only people not infected were a group of infants. These children are humanity's hope to fight the virus. So, the experimental department left the children immune to this virus in a harsh environment. Then observe their brain activity and rely on the way of cutting off contact to study the difference between them and normal people, hoping to find a cure. But unfortunately, the progress of the experiment is extremely slow. Not everyone agrees with the brutal way they treated their research subjects. In the end, protesters sabotaged the experiment and turned the staff there. Having said all this, Ava in the video also shot herself. At the moment the truth was revealed, the final door slowly opened. Just as everyone was about to leave, Glade appears with a gun. From the looks of it, it looked like he had been bitten by a Griever. Glade in his delirium asked everyone to stay in the maze. Furthermore, he aimed accurately at Thomas and intended to shoot. At the same time, Minho stood up and stabbed Glade in the chest with a spear. Glade collapsed and Thomas was unharmed. When everyone breathed a sigh of relief, the youngest person in the group must have fallen. The guy blocked a shot for Thomas. Before logging out, you must give the souvenir and automatically hand it over to Thomas. And advised if there is a chance to meet his biological parents, then he hopes Thomas will give it back to them. He must have lost his memory, so of course he doesn't know who his parents are. But every time a human being is born, he or she has a father. This is how he shows his longing for the outside world. Thomas cried bitterly. But before his body could cool down, a group of masked people rushed in. That's the opposition group mentioned in Ava's video. They cruelly dragged everyone away and put them on a helicopter. At the same time,
Ava, who committed suicide with a gun, appeared again in the apartment. It turns out she was just pretending. Everything is part of the plan. Ava informed the rest of the lab department. The first phase of the trial was very successful because there were more survivors than they expected. Thomas's expression made them even more overjoyed, and the second phase is about to begin. Ava believes the results will not disappoint them. Helicopters fly over the city. A maze built in a desert wasteland finally reveals its true form. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief when they successfully escaped, but what awaits them ahead is a new experiment. After the disaster broke out, the world was plunged into darkness. A woman walked through the crowd alone and delivered Thomas for the experiment. She hopes her son will be protected and live. Thomas looked around the dark carriage and saw that there are many children like him. With the appearance of Ava and the same fear of being engulfed, he woke up startled. After that, he fell into the panic of reality. The whole team was attacked. Thomas and his group were dragged away by guards. Helicopters under their cover, the survivors were escorted to a safe hiding place. The person in charge is named Jansen. He explained to Thomas and everyone that they have always rescued young people who were harmed from experiments. They provide them with a safe hiding place to protect them from the threat of a deadly virus. In a hidden place, there is no need to worry about anything. Eat well, sleep well, live well. Wait for the staff to check the basics. Everyone will be assigned to a safer haven. It turns out there's more than one moving maze. Looking broadly, everyone here is the lucky one to escape the maze, but most of them only come for a day or two. A strange guy in the corner, Eris, was also the lucky one to escape the maze to the facility. And that guy's maze is full of girls, not just him. Truly the luckiest person on Earth. At this time, mealtime has come. The daily person selection performance begins. Whoever is called by name is happy, because they are about to be sent to start a new life. Those who are not selected will feel discouraged. But Eris is the opposite of the others. He seemed scared when he heard his own name. At this time, Thomas noticed that Teresa was taken somewhere else alone. He quickly ran over to ask why. A person explained that she was just going to do some tests. Thomas was very worried but couldn't say anything else. At night, Eris climbed into Thomas's room through the ventilation duct. He took Thomas into the restricted area. The two saw the doctor pushing a man through a medical experiment. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but the strange thing is that Eris observed this person who was pushed inside for a long time and did not see him come out again. After all, what are these people doing? Thomas must find out the truth. During the second day's meal, Thomas tried to follow the person whose name was called out, but unfortunately, he was caught by the guards. The unusual thing is that this time, Thomas was like a torch that lit a fire. He even fought with the guards. In the end, everyone in the dormitory was given detention. Returning to the dormitory, Thomas retrieved the access card he had just stolen from the guard. He explained to everyone about the strangeness of the shelter and told everyone to give their best support. Thomas then followed Eris and entered the ventilation duct again. This time, the two successfully entered the medical lab. Unexpectedly, the first thing he saw was the embryo of a monster from the maze. Going deeper, they discovered that everyone who had been sent away was here. Everyone was hung up, bleeding, and tubes were inserted all over their bodies. They seemed to be extracting something from the blood. Just as the two of them were stunned and very shocked, Jansen suddenly brought someone into the lab. Thomas and Eris quickly hid behind the pillar, and thus overheard an even bigger secret. It turned out that Ava was not dead yet. She ordered Jansen to accelerate the progress of the experiment because the right arm, a resistance group located in the mountains, destroyed 2 bases. Thomas realized something was wrong, so he rushed back to the dormitory. After explaining that Jansen and the experiment were plotting something, he urged everyone to quickly flee. When Jansen arrived, they were escaping through the ventilation duct. At the same time, they also took a female doctor hostage on the way. But the guards were not at all gentle when they saw them. Immediately, gunshots rang out, but they were not allowed to endanger life, because Jansen, who was hunting them, ordered them to be captured alive. Luckily, there was a strong guy who knocked out the guard and conveniently took his gun. After they found Teresa, they set out to escape together. Jansen led his men in pursuit. Luckily, thanks to a locked door, the army was delayed from catching up with Thomas and the others. Jansen advised Thomas not to rush out of the base, warning they would certainly be turned into cranks by the virus. Cranks are people turned into zombies by the flare virus. But Thomas was born with a straightforward personality, so he didn't believe it. He immediately opened fire, then turned around and ran away. Aris is also very smart, and immediately broke the door lock, temporarily blocking Jansen and his group from continuing to chase. The group finally reached the real outside world, a world that has been submerged in sand and is almost a wasteland. To escape capture, they hide in an abandoned market. The next step is to go find Ava and Jansen to talk. When it comes to the right arm, as the saying goes, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. If the right arm attacks the experimental department, you should choose that side. But first, we need to collect a few things here. In the dark, people groped with flashlights. Moments later, they found the power switch. But the light woke up the sleeping cranks. One member of the group unfortunately struggled with a crank as he ran away. Others hid in the rubble. The next day, people started walking through the abandoned part of the city. In front is immense golden sand. The harsh environment made one of his teammates unconscious. Everyone had to carry him on a stretcher and continue on. Teresa told Thomas during a break that she had regained all her memory. She convinces Thomas to bring everyone back to the experiment because the truth is much more complicated than what Thomas sees. Thomas was about to ask again when Winston, his teammate, suddenly reacted badly. In order not to bother others, Winston begs Thomas to shoot him, but no one could bear to take action. In the end, Newt had to give the gun to Winston. These young people originally thought they were completely immune to the virus, but through this, they realized that they were also at risk of being infected. It seems that not everyone is immune to the virus. Everyone continues their adventure in the desert. Until one night, Thomas woke up and discovered civilization in the distance. At this moment, a storm came, and Minho was attacked. But fortunately, his ancestors still bless him. They hid in an abandoned factory in panic. But before they could breathe a sigh of relief, a crank, chained in the abandoned factory, attacked them. Before they could figure out the situation, a girl from the crank group walked over and took everyone inside the factory. It turns out this is a temporary base for survivors living in groups. The leader is an uncle named Jorge. The girl Brenda who brought them here is Jorge's adopted daughter. Jorge is also a talented person. As soon as we met, Thomas and his group were asked where they came from and where they were going. Thomas replied that he was from WCKD and was looking for the group The Right Arm. When Jorge learned that these people were part of the experiment, he was very happy. He heard that the Right Arm has always accepted immune children from WCKD, so Jorge intended to use Thomas's group as a bargaining chip to be able to safely enter the base the Right Arm created. Then there's no need to hide here and worry anymore. Unexpectedly, one of Jorge's juniors betrayed him for money and secretly informed the experiment. Soon, Jansen brought a large army here. During the chaos, Brenda arrived just in time to take down the traitor. She saved Thomas and his group. But while fleeing, Thomas and Brenda were stopped by the experiment's firepower. At the critical moment, a bomb Jorge had planted a long time ago exploded. The people of the experiment suffered heavy losses. The base building also began to collapse. The two trapped people could only find a way out from the sewer pipe. There's nothing there but rats, and at most cranks who haven't seen the sun in a long time. The cranks here look like hungry ghosts wanting to tear humans apart. The two unlucky people crashed into their lair at the same time and were chased until they were cornered. There was no way, so the two of them climbed up the rubble. In a panic, Brenda slipped and fell, hitting her head on the glass. If the glass breaks and falls, she will be in danger. Thomas cautiously approached and tried to save Brenda. At that moment, a crank chased her and knocked her down. Thomas saved Brenda, and they successfully escaped, but Brenda was bitten by a crank. After a simple bandage, the two went to the prearranged bar to meet Jorge. To qualify for bar admission, they must play according to the innkeeper's rules. First, take a sip of delicious green wine. Right after that, Thomas had hallucinations amid the mesmerizing music, then mistook Brenda for Teresa and kissed her. Then he lost consciousness again. During the exhausted kiss, Thomas vaguely remembered that he and Teresa were in the previous experiment. He tries to remind Teresa not to believe what anyone in the experiment says, because they were the ones planning the experiment. But before he finished speaking, Jansen appeared and pulled him away. Thomas suddenly woke up. Coincidentally, the first person he saw when he opened his eyes was Teresa. The remaining stragglers were also present. At this moment, Jorge was using his fist to teach the bar owner a lesson. Jorge initially thought the owner was the key to helping them find the right arm. But after this incident, he realized he was a two-faced person. Ostensibly, he assists the right arm in rescuing the immune, but secretly he puts ecstasy in drinks for immune young people like Thomas, then sells them back to the experiment. The more Jorge thought about it, the angrier he became, so he continued to give this guy another kick. He had no other choice, so he told them the location of the right arm. Following this clue, everyone set out again. Unexpectedly, on the way, they were attacked again. Two young women, Harriet and Sonia, ambushed the crowd. Just when everyone was about to start fighting, Harriet suddenly called out to greet the two girls. It turned out that the two were old acquaintances of Harriet from the maze, and in addition, they also knew where the right arm was stationed. With the help of the two young women, the group finally meets Vince, the leader of the right arm. But at this moment, the infected Brenda fell. Vince has experience, so as soon as he looked, he realized that the wound was caused by a crank, so Vince plans to shoot Brenda immediately. But a doctor at the base, Mary Cooper, stopped it. She took some blood from Thomas, saying it would create a temporary antidote that could help ease Brenda's situation. It turned out that Mary used to be a scientist at WCKD, so she recognized Thomas immediately, and it's revealed that Thomas was actually their spy before. He went through the experiment to provide them with a lot of intelligence. Mary remembered the time at the previous experiment. At that time, they devoted themselves to research, hoping to find a cure to save the world. A generation of immune young people is the key. They found that the brains of these immune individuals produce an enzyme. If these enzymes are separated from the blood, it is possible to make a powerful drug that slows the spread of the virus. But because it only slows the spread, infected people need to be revaccinated from time to time. This enzyme cannot be produced, it can only be collected from the body of an immune person. Therefore, immune young people are raw materials to create drugs. The right arm believes that young people also have the right to live, so they stand up to fight the experiment. After hearing Mary's explanation, Thomas's memory loss finally deepened a sequence of before and after events. What surprises people is that after Brenda was injected with Thomas's blood, her condition improved significantly. Just when everyone thought things were progressing in a better direction, Teresa was standing alone on a high spot, looking like she wasn't happy at all. Thomas came forward to talk to her. Teresa calmed down and told him about her previous memories. Before the experiment, Mother Teresa was tormented by the virus to the point of death, so finding a cure became Teresa's lifelong dream. At this time, she informed the department of her location. From Teresa's perspective, the motive for the experiment was good. But if all the immune people are hidden by the right arm, how will the development of the antidote continue? Immune people have the right to live, but don't infected people deserve to be saved? Because of Teresa's betrayal, the base of the right arm was subjected to a crazy attack from the experiment, and those who were immune were captured alive. Thomas had a chance to escape, but to save others, he took the initiative to turn back. Ava took a helicopter to the scene to personally direct and advise Thomas not to cause any more trouble. Because according to her, the right arm is not as righteous as its name. The experiment was just to find an antidote. Although the process was a bit cruel, it was actually the most effective. On the contrary, has the right arm done anything? They only raise the so-called flag of freedom and righteousness and cause more trouble. At this time, Mary stood up and wanted to expose all the crimes of the experiment, but unexpectedly, Jansen got angry, so he pulled out a gun and killed Mary. Thomas was angry and pulled out a bomb from his body to show his determination to never return. When the situation was tense on both sides, the scene was interrupted by a terrible sound. Many young people who were arrested took advantage of the chaos to escape. The right arm also launched a fierce counterattack. A fierce battle with heavy casualties ensued. WCKD troops captured the immune survivors, including Minho, Eris, and Sonia. But everyone could only watch helplessly as the hatch slowly closed. Early the next morning, Vince led everyone to clean up the battlefield. Finally, he told everyone that he would bring the survivors to safety. But Thomas had no intention of going with them. He made up his mind to go rescue his comrade Minho. Even if he's alone, he still wants to stop Ava and this brutal experiment. The other brothers were moved by Thomas's courage, so they simultaneously joined his group. This time, they will launch a final counterattack against WCKD. To rescue Minho, Thomas and his team adopted a plan. They found the experimental bureau train escorting immune people. They planned a major train robbery.
Jorge and Brenda attacked from the side to draw fire. Thomas and Vince attacked from behind, detonating a bomb at the train carriage intersection. They successfully robbed the back 5 cars of the train. From this camera angle, Jorge and Brenda also successfully lured the enemy onto a plane with a preset trap. After robbing them, they took the target train car away. Looking at this scene, it's really cool. However, among the dozens of immune people saved, there was no Minho they wanted to save. Anyway, the experimental department knows how important Minho is to Thomas, so they went one step ahead and took Minho somewhere else. Fortunately, the rescued immune people provide a new clue. The experimental bureau train's destination is a city. But thinking back, now the entire world is filled with ruins. The only thing that can be called a city is the headquarters of the experimental department. Thomas immediately made a new rescue plan. If everything goes well, then they will return in a week. But Vince did not agree. He said the top priority is to bring rescued people to the base on the island. They cannot put everyone in danger because of Minho alone. Furthermore, they robbed an entire carriage of the WCKD train. They shouldn't run away and just wait until they get stuck. Just as he finished speaking, the experimental department's plane appeared and was about to take off. Thankfully, they turned off the switch and the lights quick enough to not reveal their exact location. This also made Thomas see that Vince makes sense. But his brother is in trouble. He
couldn't sit still. He decided to go alone to rescue Minho, but his teammates did not allow him to be a hero alone. Newt and the others had already prepared their cars and were waiting to set off together. But this group of young people were clearly not good at driving. In an abandoned tunnel, they were unlucky to overturn their car after being attacked by cranks. At the critical moment, Brenda and George arrived promptly. Let's take a look at this legendary final city. To prevent crank attacks, the experiment built a solid wall around this city. Without permission, no one can easily enter here. There are heavy weapons on the walls. A large number of refugees protested and demonstrated outside the city because living in fear of being attacked by cranks is difficult for them. They all want to go to the city and find a place to live. The newly arrived Thomas group could only wander around outside looking for opportunities. However, the experiment's drone discovered the chip on Thomas's neck. After Jansen learned of their whereabouts, he blew up the place. The city is in a difficult situation. The virus infection rate is still skyrocketing every day. Ava, the head of WCKD in charge of developing the antidote, extracted it from Minho's body and got the strongest virus antibodies for the time being. But creating an antidote will take some time. But sponsors have offered their investments at this very moment. Instead of throwing money at it to develop an antidote, they think they should still build more safe areas, for example, the last city, to protect healthy people. Teresa next to her really couldn't listen anymore. Currently, the number of infected people is 3 times the number of healthy people. Building a safe area can only postpone the misfortune of ordinary people, so it's basically impossible to defeat the virus. If the project is stopped at this point, the previous sacrifices will be in vain. With Teresa's active efforts, the chaotic situation temporarily calmed down. But they don't have much time left. Elsewhere, though Thomas and the others were not injured by the experiment's cannon, while fleeing, they were kidnapped by a group of masked rebels. And the leader of this rebel group is Glade. Before that, after Glade was destroyed, Minho stabbed him in the chest. How can he be healthy now? It seems like his habit of surviving is also very persistent. When Thomas thought of how he would have to leave, he immediately vented. He immediately rushed to give Glade a punch. Newt separated the two and spoke. At that time, Glade was also bitten by a crank, so he lost his mind and made a mistake. But Glade was from the original camp. How did he get here? He certainly didn't bring them there to beat or capture them. He wanted to cooperate with Thomas's group. Didn't Thomas want to enter the city last? But Glade just cleverly knew the secret entrance. After both sides calmed down, Glade takes them to meet the rebel leader, Lawrence. Lawrence was also the one who saved Glade's life at that time. It looks like Lawrence has been infected with the virus for quite a while. The virus didn't just cause him to lose his nose, but it also causes the right side of his body to overgrow with horny skin that resembles tree bark. To prevent the spread of the virus, Lawrence must have an immunity serum with him at all times. Thomas came up with an idea to negotiate for the serum, which he needed most at the moment. Lawrence did not deny it, and immediately agreed to help Thomas enter the final city through a secret route. After reaching an agreement, Glade took Thomas's group through the sewers. The city's prosperity remains as it was before the virus outbreak. High-rise buildings are brightly lit. It's just that during curfew time, the streets are deserted. Because of the appearance of Thomas and the others, the courtyard was even more alert. The headquarters of the experiment was filled with security guards. Scanners were installed on every floor, and there were cameras everywhere. It is like an unbreakable castle. After investigating, Glade thought the only way was to involve Teresa. Some people objected, because Teresa had betrayed them before, and of course Thomas doesn't want to either. He cannot forgive Teresa's betrayal, but also still cares for her. At this time, Teresa was subjected to the most severe shock. The strongest serum she created from Minho's blood, after using it to inject a girl infected with the virus, was still not good. The worst thing is that Ava realizes the virus has begun to spread through the air. At most, within a month, everyone in the city will be infected. Jansen feels there is no need to be pessimistic. Until then, just bring the immune person to another base. Ava asked back, what if they've used up all the immune people and still haven't developed any medicine? Perhaps what should be eliminated will sooner or later be eliminated. Instead of tormenting these young men, it's better to accept nature's arrangements. Humans should leave hope for the next generation with immunity. The situation is increasingly dangerous, as Newt is also infected in an inexplicable way. Thomas's considerations about Teresa had to be put aside. Because he had to save his brothers, he was forced to use Teresa to get into WCKD. Thomas was in charge of revealing himself to lure Teresa to a place where there were no people. Then he kidnapped and took Teresa away. Everyone plans to use Teresa as a hostage, helping them sneak into the laboratory building and rescue Minho. Teresa struggles internally. On the one hand, she finds herself fighting for justice. No matter how many people are sacrificed to develop an antidote, it will be worth it. But at the same time, as a researcher, Minho is no longer useful.
Because his serum cannot save people. In short, Teresa finally decided to help them. To avoid being detected by the laboratory surveillance equipment, Teresa helped everyone get the chips out of their necks. At this time, she accidentally discovered that Brenda had been bitten by a crank but was still unharmed. After asking, it was discovered that Brenda had only had one shot of the serum a few months ago while still at the right arm's base. Dr. Mary took the serum from Thomas's body. Teresa, who initially doubted the existence of an antidote, suddenly felt hopeful. She advised Thomas that he could do an experiment with the experimental department, but he no longer trusted her, so he was not persuaded. Teresa did not say more, but quietly took away Thomas's bloody bandage. Due to the strict control of the experimental department building, every floor is guarded by guards. So Newt and Glade disguised themselves as special police officers and escorted Teresa inside. After successfully passing through the security gate with the scanner, they groped their way into the stairs. Led by Teresa, they guided them to destroy the cables, coordinating to break into the experimental department's network system. Soon, everyone found the cell. Immune teenagers in captivity are rescued, but unfortunately, Minho is not among them. Teresa discovered through the system that Minho was transferred to the medical department on the other side of the building. So the three decided to split into two groups. Glade takes care of the immune person and stays behind to find the serum, while Thomas, Newt, and Teresa will be in charge of finding Minho. But halfway there, they clashed with Jansen in the elevator. At this time, Thomas and Newt disguised themselves as WCKD soldiers. Jansen couldn't recognize them either, and Teresa was so worried that she kept swallowing. Just as they stepped out of the elevator and thought there was nothing wrong, Jansen sensed something was wrong and came over with a gun. The situation is urgent. Teresa locks Thomas and Newt inside the glass door, protecting the two people so they can escape to the upper floor. Over here, Minho is not idle at all. Even in his worst condition, he still defeated the doctor. Then, Newt and Thomas also came here. Three friends reunite. They were again forced into a room by the guards' guns. The dilemma arose when Jansen confronted them. The three decided to jump into the pool downstairs. Simple but effective. But don't get excited too soon, because they were in the sights of the four guards. Just when the three of them thought it was difficult to escape death, one of the guards turned around and shot three of their comrades at random. But it's actually three enemies. This fake guard is Glade. It turns out that after Glade delivered the immune man and the serum to Brenda, he returned to the scene to provide reinforcements. And at this time, Brenda has turned into the wildest bus driver. Brenda is forced to flee with the immune children to avoid capture. Although she escaped being chased, the city gate was heavily guarded, and it was almost impossible to break out. Fortunately, Brenda has a backup plan. The Free-Pin bridge truck driver officially went to war. With Brenda's cooperation, he moved the entire bus away. After making a wide turn, the bus landed smoothly outside the high wall. The people sitting in the car were also unharmed. Truly a top-tier talent, can't fault it at all. Meanwhile, Lawrence rallies the rebels outside the city to encourage them to finally conquer the city. Lawrence launches a desperate attack, blowing a gap in the city wall. At this time, the experimental department was attacked by a cyber attack, so it lost the ability to mobilize defensive artillery. The rebels outside the city took that opportunity to strike the final blow. Rushing straight to the experimental department, the last city was suddenly engulfed in the flames of war. But Thomas and the others were stuck in the middle and had to hide. But at that time, Newt's situation suddenly became worse. His lips were dark, his body was constantly convulsing. He gave his pendant to Thomas and said his final goodbyes. Thomas did not want to leave his brother behind. He quickly asked Minho and Glade to look for Brenda to get the serum. But right after that, Newt suddenly lost control. Then Teresa's voice rang out on the radio. She told Thomas that as long as he returned to the experiment, Newt could be saved. It turned out that Teresa had been experimenting with Thomas's blood from the swab. She recognized the properties in Thomas's body. Not only does it slow down virus penetration, but it can also attack in reverse. That means Thomas's serum can cure the disease. Only he can save all humanity. God gave me a great responsibility, Thomas. Before he could fully understand what it meant to save humanity, Newt gradually lost his mind because of the virus. He wanted to attack Thomas. During intermittent recovery of consciousness, Newt begged Thomas to end him. But his sanity was quickly taken away. He pinned Thomas down again, then woke up again. Newt grabbed the gun and attempted to commit suicide, but was quickly stopped by Thomas. You can't live well and you can't die either. Newt fell into madness again. He took a knife and stabbed Thomas straight in the chest. Thomas couldn't bear to hurt Newt, so he became passive. He just wanted to hold out until Brenda got the serum. Newt used his last bit of reason to stab himself in the heart because he had no other choice. Losing another close friend, Thomas was in immense pain. He returned to the experimental department to find Ava to ask if he could really save humanity. If his serum alone is effective, then can other immune people be spared? After receiving an affirmative answer,
Ava dropped the pistol, but unexpectedly, at this moment, Jansen appeared and shot Ava. Then he overpowered Thomas and dragged him into the laboratory. It turned out that he wanted to monopolize the antidote. Only those who conquer can get this precious antidote. He wants to fulfill his unfinished ambitions. That is world domination. But first, he must live. In fact, Jansen was also infected. After Jansen got Thomas's blood, he ordered Teresa to make the antidote. Teresa also made a jar. Just as Jansen was about to inject the serum, Teresa attacked him from behind. Teresa's long-standing wish is to find a cure to save humanity, but Jansen's way of doing things made her unbearable. Teresa unchained Thomas and the two ran away together. On the way, Thomas was shot in the stomach by Jansen. The two of them hid in the Crank research room, but Jansen still followed closely. After Teresa was discovered, she voluntarily handed over the remaining antidote, begging Jansen to spare Thomas. But Jansen doesn't work that way. He threatened Thomas's life to control Teresa. Thomas stood up and used all his strength to hit Jansen in the head with something, but it didn't hit. "You missed it, son of a bitch. Is that right?" As soon as he finished speaking, the glass in the cell shattered. Just like that, Jansen was bitten by two cranks and lost his life. Teresa escaped to the top floor of the building with Thomas, who was seriously injured. There, Teresa handed over the only antidote to Thomas. By chance, Jorge and others on the plane saw the two people. But because the fire was so big, the plane couldn't get close. After many tries, Teresa was able to get Thomas on the plane, but she chose to stay behind, as the headquarters collapsed and sank into a sea of flames. When Thomas regained consciousness, he had already reached the base on the island. This place looks very primitive, but they are no longer bothered by that terrible virus. If it weren't for the gunshot wound, Thomas would feel like he was still in a dream. They finally arrived at the paradise they had always wished for, and they will also soon build a new house here. And the friends who died for this will also have their names engraved on stone, so that everyone will remember them forever. This concludes the series. Thank you for watching the video. Goodbye, and see you again in the next recaps videos on the channel.